Hi, Mike, you can start whenever you are ready.
All right, we'll go ahead and call the Board of Selectmen special meeting, February 16th, 6 p.m. to order. In attendance is myself, Mike Ergo, First Selectman, Bob Carlson, Selectman, Nita Kincaid, Selectwoman, Christine Dias, Admin Finance for the town. I want to thank everyone who has taken the time to join our meeting tonight. We just have just one agenda item tonight, and that's just budget review. Before that, we do have public comments on agenda items tonight, just because it's a budget night. We generally don't have public comments on the special meetings, but if anyone has public comments, we'd love to be able to hear them tonight. We do respectfully ask for public comments to not exceed 2 minutes in respect for everyone's time. And we have Haley.
All right. I see Brian Rathbun. You're recognized.
Hello. I'm just wondering, as you go through the budget review tonight, I didn't know how much was turned in at the end of the year in June from the different, how they return money back they haven't used. And I just think you ought to take that in consideration, because as far as I'm concerned, when they do that, we've been overtaxed. So I would like to see the amount that was given back in June maybe taken out of this year's budget for any for the budget, because it, like I say, we've had a reval, which is going to up the taxes anyways. So I hate to be double taxed. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Seeing no other comments. It's public comment. I don't see any. I just want to mention the we have one of the things on the budget. Well, first of all, Bob, did you have something you needed to mention?
Well, I just wanted to respond to Brian for a second. Brian, I know you're still here. So when the statement you just made, I understand what you're saying in a typical year, but this year, most of the year was during COVID-19 times. So some budgets may not have been spent because they were limited because of the COVID-19 situation. And if we can get behind it sooner instead of later, then we hope the majority of this year will not have that same situation. So you may see an occasional budget with some leftover budget dollars for this year, but to go back to what their normal year would the expense would be could happen going into the next year. So just want to have you make sure you kept that in mind. That's all. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Bob. With no other public comment, one of the items that's in the agenda, well, that's in our budget, which I know will be discussed in great detail, is the electric truck. And we talked about that before as a board. We approved together going for the grant for the electric truck. We actually received approval for the grant for the electric truck. And we are fortunate that in our town, oh geez, big spider in my office. We have John Lindsay, who lives on Fowler Road, who is actually very familiar with and works in this industry and was willing to do some analysis for us on this truck. So I thought it would make sense to have John try to educate us a little bit about this so we could have some good discussion about it. I did provide to you guys some of the information that John had provided to me. So if it's all right, I'd like to start with that particular topic, just in case he doesn't want to hang out for the rest of the meeting. He is on the call here with us. So if there's no objection.
Oh, when did you give us the information? Did you just say you gave us?
It could have been Friday. It was Friday, Nita.
Yeah, Friday we received it.
Okay.
So why don't we bring John in, and he can talk a little bit about his background, and then we can just go through the reasons that this truck would be something for the town to consider.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'll introduce myself, a little bit of my background. I've been in the electrical industry for 35 years, and I've been in the electric vehicle industry for about the last 3 or 4 years. I work for a global company called Schneider Electric, and a lot of what we do is energy management and control throughout the world. We've got about 22,000 employees in the US, and I head the electric vehicle division in North America for Schneider Electric. So my focus is actually on infrastructure, but because of what we do and how we do it, I have to have relatively extensive experience on the vehicles themselves and understand how they perform and what they do to be able to make sure that they meet the requirements of what we call an ICE vehicle or an internal combustion engine vehicle does today. So I've got what I would say is probably a reasonable amount of experience in this space. Some people might even say I'm an industry thought leader in the environment because we develop solutions for companies like General Motors, Ford. We work with Rivian, who's an emerging company from a vehicle standpoint, Volvo, a company called PACCAR, which is actually one of the vehicles that it's the parent company of the vehicle you listed as Kenworth. And we develop solutions for them so that we can build out infrastructure and make sure the vehicles that they're going to utilize are going to work for the applications that they're going to utilize them for. So happy to answer any questions and help dispel some of the concerns that are out there. It's a pretty interesting industry, and it's actually quite a little bit more mature than most people know. It's been around for quite a few years. The industry as a whole has hovered in the space that exists today for about 14 or 15 years. So it's evolving pretty quickly.
Thanks, John. So I have, so basically the, Nita, I'm sorry if you didn't see it, but I might be able to pull up on the screen. John, can you see the screen?
I can see each of you on the screen, and I could probably pull up the document that I forwarded and speak to it if you want to give me a minute, but I can't see it on the screen, no.
I can pull it up on the screen if it's easier too. You just have to tell me which document you want me to pull up. Is it maybe the fuel calculator document or?
Yeah, that would work because it's a good starting point to have the conversation around the vehicle itself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you see that?
Yeah, and this will work. It's kind of a good starting point. It's a small piece of what we do overall, but what we fundamentally do is, and we get this request from customers a lot, and the customers in the space are all over the place. Some of them are really sophisticated and know a lot about the vehicles. Some of them don't know very much at all, and they're looking for our assistance in helping them make a decision on moving forward. And we don't always make, although a lot of the times we do because the technology in the vehicle is much more advanced than people believe, but we don't always make recommendations to move forward. In some instances, it doesn't make any sense at all. And I'll give you a quick example. The vehicle that you're looking at is considered a Class 8 vehicle, and it doesn't work in 5% of the applications that it's applied to. And that's what a lot of people hear about. It's the long haul vehicle that they see as a tractor trailer, and it doesn't really work in that space. But 95% of Class 8 vehicles are actually utilized in a 300-mile and under radius. So what we do is we sit down and take a look at those vehicles. We do basic calculations like this, and it takes how the vehicle is utilized today. It looks at, what you're going to be doing with it, the number of miles per day it travels, and the detail can get pretty intense. We can actually look at the average number of stops, the average number of left-hand turns, which is important because the vehicle sits a little bit longer. We can look at driver behavior if we wanted to, if the customer wanted us to. And we take all that data and we boil it down and fundamentally transition it over to what it would be in the EV space. Will the vehicle do its job is the first thing we look at. We initially ignore cost, but the first thing we look at is, will the vehicle perform well in that space? And in this case, the vehicle actually does pretty well. It performs on par with what you have from what we would equate to a brand new diesel vehicle. So we look at that, and then we look at the cost models and break it down. And with the grant that you're looking at, the cycle time for the vehicle, how long it sits, the infrastructure that would have to be built out to charge the vehicle with the circuit breaker and charge station that would have to be added to charge the vehicle, it ends up being roughly about, I think the numbers here show about a $4,000 a year savings for the town as a whole, even with some of the build out that has to take place. And some of the big factors in there are associated with the fact that the maintenance on an EV is about 50% less than it is on a diesel vehicle. You don't use brakes the way you would in a diesel vehicle, so they rarely ever wear out. Tires have a tendency to wear a little bit more, so you can see some of the tire costs being a little bit higher. But overall, the maintenance on the vehicle, because you're not replacing fluids, you're not having to replace oil and things of that nature in the vehicle, the maintenance is significantly less. So in this case, it actually is a small savings for the town overall. The other factor we look at is there's a significant reduction in carbon generated by the vehicle itself. So there's a big savings in that space. I don't have a little trouble reading this. It's a little small, but I think it was something like 125,000 pounds of carbon annually with the vehicle that's saved. So it's a pretty significant impact. So the vehicle does a nice job for what the town is looking to do. And interestingly enough, these vehicles are significantly more powerful than a diesel engine in many ways. So they can actually do quite a little bit more if tasked with it to be able to meet the needs of the town. So at a base level, this is where we start, and this is what we look at to support the decision making around the vehicle itself. If there's any questions around that, usually there's a lot of questions around battery utilization. Happy to expand out and answer a little bit more.
Yeah, and maybe John, just talk. I think that's a concern some people have is, and first of all, I'll also say John isn't selling us this vehicle, just so you know. He just so happens to live in town and has experience in this. So, you know, it's nice to have a neighbor who knows about this stuff. But maybe talk about the batteries thing, because I think that's something that some people wonder about, the eco-friendliness, first of all, because obviously it does take work to get the materials for the battery, but these electric vehicles are much more eco-friendly even with that taken into account. So
yeah, and thank you for that statement. I have no skin in the game on this. I'm just I you know, obviously I have an interest in the industry, but I'm not selling anything here. I don't have any benefit that I'm gaining from this opportunity at all. The opportunities I pursue are significantly larger than this type of situation. So, but the battery itself, yeah, there's a lot of questions around it. There's some legitimate concerns. Actually, the manufacturing of the vehicles themselves does create a higher footprint, a carbon footprint in the first year. That's alleviated within months once the vehicle's on the road. So over the lifetime of the vehicle, the carbon footprint is about 35% less than an internal combustion engine vehicle. And that's also because it's an emerging market and some of the production is newer and they're ramping up and they're actually having to build factories. So the cost is higher initially, but over the next 3 years, the cost is going to plummet through the floor. The average cost of a battery these days is about $165 per kilowatt hour. And the breakthroughs are coming at a stunning pace. General Motors is actually now at $85 per kilowatt hour on the production of their battery because the production costs are coming down, the manufacturing costs are coming down, the carbon footprint associated is coming down. People often ask me, what about the batteries? How do you get rid of them? They are eventually going to die. And that's a legitimate concern, but there's some misconceptions around it. The batteries in the vehicles themselves are considered no longer viable for the vehicle when they hit 85% of the capacity. So in real simple terms, if a vehicle had a 100-mile range when it was brand new, the manufacturers of the vehicles no longer consider them viable when they can only be charged to 85% of that, so or 85 miles. Those batteries are still incredibly valuable, and it'll be about 50 to 70 years before we actually run into a situation where we're going to want to start recycling them, because the power density in those batteries are going to be used in other ways for backup to facilities. Just a quick example, a Prius has about a 35 kilowatt hour battery in it. And these days, when you equip a home for solar, you get a 10 kilowatt hour battery for the home. That'll run your home for about a day, 24 hours or so. If you were to use that Prius battery at 35 kilowatt hours, you'd be able to run your home for about 3.5 days. So the batteries are incredibly valuable. People are going to want to use them for storage purposes exactly like that, to harden the infrastructure, provide backup services. But when they do hit a point where they're going to need to be recycled, companies that I work with, a company like Proterra, they've actually reclaimed 99% of the components of the battery, and they're recycling them already. And they're just doing it for test purposes because they actually still want the batteries, but they're trying to find ways to recycle them. So very little harm to the environment. They can be reutilized and all the elements in them can be recaptured and fundamentally rebuilt into new batteries. So that technology is coming along very, very rapidly. And again, the industry as a whole is desperate for those batteries. They're actually almost anxious to watch the vehicles wear out so they can recapture them and utilize them for storage and energy purposes. So it's not well understood, but it's sort of what we do in a lot of ways. We actually like to capture that storage capacity and be able to utilize it in different ways.
John, thanks. Let me just explain, just for the benefit of everyone. So the town did apply for a grant at the direction of the Selectmen a few months ago, and did receive, I think within a couple of weeks ago, February 9th, we received approval of the grant for $167,942.38 to replace our 97 Class 8. So basically, these new EV trucks are, they're more expensive than a diesel truck. However, I think as was just demonstrated, we see that they're actually will cost less over the life of the vehicle due to the fact that you're not going through fuel and all the other things that we just talked about. So what we have in the budget when we get to that point is basically we basically put in there the potential for a lease payment on the truck to try to keep it manageable from a debt management perspective. So I just wanted to kind of set the table on that. And with that, maybe it's best if the Selectmen have any questions for John while he's here on this topic. Go ahead, Bob. You're muted, Bob. You're muted. Bob, you're muted. You're muted.
Okay, I have to start all over. So I was saying, thank you, John, for coming to the meeting. I appreciate you coming by.
Sure.
I have not seen the truck that Mike looked at, so I don't know, much about it until I read the paperwork we received on Friday. Can you tell me what the average cost is of this Class 8 vehicle that we'd be looking at?
So they're a little bit across the board right now, and again, not my area of expertise, but I am familiar with it. They do run about $320,000 to $360,000 for a truck. They do range, and quite honestly, the cost structures of them are something that can be discussed when you're approaching manufacturers like PACCAR, who manufactures the Kenworth vehicle. Classic companies like Mack are also developing a Class 8 vehicle. They actually have a couple on the road. Volvo is developing them as well. And they're developing them here in the United States. They're manufacturing them here, but the cost for them does range. It depends on exactly what you're looking for, but somewhere between $320,000 and $360,000.
And I saw, thank you. And I saw on the chart that you had the 350 number, and I doing a little bit of math, it looked like the town was going to be in for about 182,000. When you subtract the grant that we received of, I think it was around 168,000. So So that the town's expense on this truck would be about 182,000. You just mentioned a little while ago that you felt that there's going to be sharp decreases as manufacturing gets more wide range. We know that some of the car companies have actually put drop dead dates on when they're going to be completely electrical down the road. Years from now, it could be in the 2030s. But I guess the world's moving in that direction. So if you see sharp decreases, and I know that the grant we received is only good until August 31st of this year, we have to commit. Do you find that those decreases would be that great? Or do you think that it would make sense to wait a year or two because we may not get the grant back again?
It's a fantastic question. And what we're seeing in the space is something that we weren't expecting. So as the cost of the batteries for these vehicles, which is the bulk of the cost of the vehicle itself, decreases, what they're doing is they're enhancing the vehicles from a technological standpoint. So we think the cost target that they're looking at for return on investment is going to be pretty stable over the next 10-year period. But what's going to happen is the technology is going to increase at a significant level. So they're going to go closer to what we're seeing as autonomous vehicles, where they're not going to require drivers. We're already seeing tests of Class 8 vehicles and Class 5 vehicles in California to go down that path. Not a path I'm personally, professionally entirely comfortable with, but instead of actually lowering the cost of the vehicle, the technology is going to advance and they're going to add more feature to it. They've got to maintain a certain margin in a certain volume on the vehicle. So our guess is they're going to hover in that range, because we've been wondering the exact same thing. It's a great question.
But you're saying it could go the way like flat screen TVs went and smartphones went, where they're, the smallest flat screen TV I have in the house is probably my most expensive one, because it's the one I bought first. So Mike, I've got a question for you. Has the highway department, specifically Donnie, looked at the truck, understood the capabilities of the truck, and pretty much signed off on that it would made sense for them?
Yeah, no, Donnie has definitely, we talked a lot about this, and for what we use it for, it will serve a great purpose for us. We basically use this truck to go to the incinerator with our garbage. We spend a lot of time idling. We use it to drive there a couple times a week. We're going to have to be going to Lisbon starting this year, I think, which is a little bit of a further drive. So yeah, Donnie's comfortable with this. Obviously it's new, but I think, just to clarify, I think you just kind of made a comment. I don't want to confuse people. I think what John said was kind of unlike the TV situation where you paid more for it back when it was first come out. I think, if I heard you right, John, you're saying that's not necessarily the case. We think the prices are going to be pretty stable because there's margins that they have to make, and that all will happen over the coming years is that there'll be more technology in the trucks, but the prices of the trucks will probably remain pretty stable. Is that accurate?
That's what the vehicle manufacturers are sharing with us today, yes.
Okay, so by securing this grant for the vehicle, even if we said, oh, let's not do this year, forget the grant, it wouldn't be a smart move if we were going to go this route, because we may not get the grant and the prices aren't going to come down by $160,000 or anything like that. No.
If I could, it is an interesting discussion because there are different aspects. It is a moving technology target, but one of the things that I would suggest be considered as you're looking at this, and it is a hard pill to swallow in some senses, the industry is going this way. This isn't something that's largely being driven by the consumer. This is being driven in large part by legislation. Many of the states are already out, about 22 of them, with some aggressive dates to be fully electrified by 2035. So no new vehicles after that point will be anything other than EV. And quite honestly, getting in on it a little bit early will give you a real fundamental understanding of what's really going to be required as they push in that direction. And these grants aren't going to be available for a very long time. As you have seen on the Tesla vehicle, they may bring them back, but they've already expired, so you can't get the $7,500 rebate for a Tesla vehicle. So these rebates will be around for a while, but when it becomes standard practice in the industry, they are going to disappear, and it's going to be the cost of vehicle that has to be purchased. And this gives you a bit of an edge to understand where the industry is going to go, how these vehicles perform, and what adjustments you'd have to make, if any, to be able to, manage a fleet of this nature.
Do you have any other questions, Bob?
No other questions, Mike, at this time. When we get to the line item, we can discuss it in greater detail.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nita, did you have any questions?
Oh, it was very interesting. Thank you.
Okay. John, thanks a lot for your presentation and feedback on this. We'll talk more about it when we get to the line. In fact, maybe we'll start with capital if it's all the same to everybody, so we can talk about it sooner maybe. I guess from my perspective, not only do we see the financial value in this, but this is a really big deal from a environmental standpoint. I think it would be a really great thing for North Stonington to kind of be at the forefront of this. And I know when we first talked about it, there was some positive comments from people about it. So it's a need for the town, and kind of lines up with a grant opportunity that Craig was able to secure for us. So good stuff. So John, we'll thank you, and we're going to go on with our conversation now.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. So is there any opposition to starting with capital, or it's at the end of the budget? Yeah.
Page 7.
Then we can move to the front. So page 7. So on page 7, we have,
Very bottom of the page.
yep, we've got some refurb money in C109 and C116, another 25,000 for, is that a lease payment? Christine?
Yes, that's the lease payment on the new over-the-rail mower we purchased.
Yep. Any questions on those two?
No, the lease payment, so.
Okay. We just moved, onto page 8 here, which is, let's see. The pickup truck. So Donnie's got a pickup truck in there.
So this is to replace the NS42 truck. It's a 2006. And I know they're having some issues with it. So it's definitely time in the replacement cycle to replace this particular pickup truck.
So we've got it in there with the whole value of the truck. It's not something we're leasing. We're proposing purchasing that truck. Go ahead.
What's the function of this truck? Whose truck is it? How does it get used?
The 2006 is one of the it's one of the plow trucks, and it's used for other functions as well, but it's one of the fleet that we would need to replace. I think he's talking about keeping the other truck because we have had use where we need, even though that truck is probably at the end of its useful existence, it still would serve us well as kind of a backup truck. One of the problems we had this last storm, and we have every storm, but particularly this last storm, we have a lot of equipment malfunction, which can just happen depending on what the roadways are like and all that kind of stuff. So, we're able to get the trucks up and running back on the road, but it's nice if we have one we can just kind of hop in and go instead of waiting to have to repair a truck. So.
Is this the oldest truck we have in the fleet as far as plow trucks? And are we still using it today? Do we use it in the last few storms?
We are still using it today. I think the 2006 is the oldest one. Christine, do you know?
I'm looking at some stuff I have from Donnie. I think that's accurate.
I believe it is the oldest truck for that type of truck.
All right, so what I would say, this is just me thinking, I would probably leave it in there, not because I approve of it, but I want to see it get vetted out by the Board of Finance. And ultimately, if when we have our budget hearing and see what happens then, but I think it probably deserves more discussion. So I'm willing to leave it there for now.
Alrighty. We did have some money to move down for bulky waste pile closure. We talked about adding that last year to start putting some money aside, knowing that, you know, it's probably only a decade or so away. I'm just hypothesizing from, you know, having to close the bulky waste pile permanently, and that does cost money. So I don't know how you feel about, you know, putting money aside for that, kind of starting now. We talked about it last year. We ended up cutting it. It's just a way of preparing for kind of what the potential inevitable is.
Do we know what the number on that inevitable capping is? The total number would be? Is it $250,000?
I think that was asked at the last meeting. I don't think Donnie had really a really good handle on it. I think, you know, there was a time we were talking about, you know, $500,000 or something like that. I don't know if that's true or not. Christine, does that number ring a bell to you?
That is the number that's been thrown around. I don't know that we have, you know, that specifically on paper from an actual estimate. But I think that it's something we need to start planning for, because the bulky waste pile is not going to last forever. You know, I think realistically within 10 years. And so even at a minimum of $250,000, if we start putting away $25,000 now, we'll be better prepared for it.
Christine, who is it that's told us that we have 10 years of life left in that? Is that someone's come up and looked at it, investigated it, and we know that for a fact, or is that just that's just supposition that we assume that will be no longer be able to be used?
So it's not really something we can know for a fact, because it all depends on how much waste goes into the pile every year, and what the rate of decomposition is, and all the factors that go in with the bulky waste. But I want to say that information, as far as the lifespan time range, was given to us either by a surveyor or by DEP. So a lot of it has to do with how much waste we're allowing into the pile every year. So depending on how much people are bringing in, it could be shorter or longer.
Okay. So my thought is that, you know, we can justify pretty much almost everything that's in capital if you wanted to, but the town couldn't afford that. So I'm thinking every time we leave something in, something else has to come out. There's only so many dollars in the well, and only so much we can expect the taxpayers to front. So again, I'd like to see more discussion on that, to find out if we can get a more definitive date of when we think that is going to have to be capped, how much the value would be, and how much we need to put in. Should it be something that would be an increasing value each year? Again, I don't mind leaving it in for now, but I think that something like that is going to need more discussion down the road by us, the Board of Finance, and ultimately the town when it comes to a review of the budget. So, all right, thank you.
I just am wondering, Bob, I'm not sure if we're going to have that level of information during this budget cycle. And if you're going to look for more information that's that detailed on this topic, and I don't disagree with you, maybe we ought to just remove it and have that discussion over the upcoming year. And if we're going to start saving for it, save for it next year when we have the information that you're talking about.
Well, I think that, Mike, whenever I think of my own budget at home, and, you know, and there's things you want to have, and there's only so much money in the pot, and you have to decide which is the most important at the time. So I've looked at this budget pretty thoroughly, and I know there's other places where I'd be willing to take money out to support something like this if it made sense. But I agree with you. Maybe at this point, maybe we should take it out, do some more investigating on it, and then bring it back later. Maybe it has to come back at a higher number next year. If we find out that everything that we're talking about now is a fact, we might have to bring it back next year with maybe a $30,000 or $40,000 number. But as of right now, and you'll see it as we go through the capital budget. I think there's other areas where we don't need to have as much money as we have in a line item, because again, there's only so much money in the pot. I mean, we can't do everything. You know, nobody can just do everything in 1 year unless we hit the lottery as a town, which isn't going to happen. So,
Ida, are you opposed to removing the 25,000?
No, I'm not.
Okay,
I'm not.
let's just strike it this year. We'll make a note to do some more research on it. Okay, the truck, we just talked a lot about that.
That clarifying question, am I taking that out of the next draft or am I leaving that in, the 25,000?
Remove it. So as you just heard yeah, go ahead, Anita.
Curious, did I'm trying to remember, did the Board of Finance go through all of this last year when we did the budget? I don't remember looking at we did, okay. Did they toss anything out of that?
They reviewed and they had questions about different things. I don't remember specifics of which items they were questioning or not, but they definitely highly reviewed the capital.
Okay.
Traditionally, you know, obviously it was different last year a little bit, but the Board of Finance isn't really line item vetoing things. They're relying on us to do that. That's our job. You know, they can, and they did last year. They had a couple of things that they added actually back in. I don't know if there was any removals. I just can't recall. But you know, it's kind of our job to put the best budget together that we feel comfortable with. So.
Okay.
Okay, so the tractor trailer. Yep, go ahead, Bob.
well, just to piggyback on what you just said, yes, they don't line item veto things, but they do let us know if they think the budget's too high, and then we have to go back and figure out where we want to take the money from. So it's ultimately our decision where it comes from, but the bottom line of the budget falls on the backs of the Board of Finance. On the $100,000 truck, can you tell me, Mike, why is it that is it because we have an opportunity, or why is it that we're trying to replace the truck we have now? Is that truck is it in disrepair? Does it not work? Is it near its life's end? Can you give me a background on the truck we have now and its use and what's going on with it?
Well, it's a 96. So, I mean, that's 30 years old, basically. And it's that we do have an opportunity. So I think it's a combination of both things. You know, like any truck, you know, if we can continue to put money into these things, I think when you look at the fact that we were able to secure a $167,000 grant and replace it with a clean, efficient vehicle like this, and it was something that we needed to do, the stars kind of aligned here. The $100,000 number is just kind of assuming a lease for, I think we got like a 3-year lease assumption in there. You know, we can fine tune that probably a little bit more, I think, as far as that number. But you know, I wanted to talk about the item tonight because I know it's a major item, and I think it's one of those ones that would be a different type of thing for the town to do. So I think it was definitely a discussion for us to have. Go ahead, Bob.
So here's my thing, Mike. So I read in the paperwork that we received that the truck has to be bought and paid for in full before we're able to get the reimbursement. So if that's the case, can we lease it over a 3, or if it's $350,000 and you're doing 100,000 a year, it's 3.5 years. So it may be more than 3, but can we do that and get reimbursed, or does it have to be bought and paid for within 1 calendar year? And then the truck we have now, which you just said still runs, we have 90 days to destroy that truck. It can't be used again. It has to be dismantled, or 3-inch hole bored through the block of the motor block, and it has to, the state has to know that truck can never be driven again. So we're actually destroying a truck that still has some life and buying a truck that we may have to, if it's $350,000, lease over more than 3 years. It could be 3, 4 years, 5 years, depending on how much the town's willing to pay. So I'm looking for some information there. Thank you.
So when you lease, you actually they pay for the truck, so it is being paid for, and then we're owing the money to the leasing company. You are correct. We do have to destroy the 96 and not use it anymore. So it's just a matter of whether or not, we find value in the fact that we're getting this grant. And to me, it's really bigger than the money. I think the funds are great. The fact that it's actually a smart financial decision is fantastic. But the biggest thing is that we need to be, as towns, I think we need to be leaders in the sustainability efforts. And if we can show that we can do something like this, other towns can maybe follow suit, and more people can follow suit. And I think it's a great thing for us to be a leader on. So I think it makes sense in really all the ways. Nita, did you have a question?
No.
I mean, obviously, I'm in favor of leaving this in here. We can certainly look and fine tune the numbers a little bit more with the leasing company. And we can, when we put a final budget together, we'll have a really solid number in there. But
Like, the other thing I just wanted to point out with the truck is that we have not put this 167,000 figure in the revenue side, and we would be able to reflect that as an offset in intergovernmental revenues.
I didn't hear that, Christine. Could you repeat it, please?
So in the budget that you have before you, it does not have the corresponding revenue that's represented in the letter, that 167,000 as the revenue offset, because we would recognize that reimbursement in this budget. So we can add, if we keep the truck in, we can add $167,942 to revenue, because we'll get that reimbursement during this fiscal year.
Yeah, like I had figured about $182,000 expense to the town if I did my addition right.
so are anyone wanting to remove this, or are we good leaving it in there?
Mike, I'd leave it in there for this reason only, and I don't know if the town really needs to spend that kind of money on if we know we have life left in the truck we have now, but I'd like to have other people comment on it. I myself would take it out because I don't think the town can afford it. But if you and Nita want to leave it in there, and we can have the Board of Finance discuss it, if they tell us our budget is too high, that's probably the first place I'm going to go.
Well, they're definitely going to tell us that, I'm sure, regardless of what we come up with, because I've never been to a Board of Finance meeting where they didn't. But you just said you want to leave it in there. So Nita, are you good with leaving it in there?
I'm fine with it.
Great. We have a reduction from the Ambulance Association from what they submitted. Town building maintenance, I think we reduced that number this year a little bit. Just going to keep going unless you guys have any questions.
Mike, you said you reduced the town building maintenance. I see it as an uptick of 10,000. Am I looking at the wrong line?
Oh, I'm sorry. We added it. My apologies.
Because we have additional buildings that we're responsible for, so we're trying to get it to the realistic number it should be.
Is that is that the old school buildings, Christine?
The rec center and the old 298 North Rusty Road, and also just the age of the buildings is increasing, so it's going to take more to maintain them. We haven't done much with the senior center, so we just want to have extra money in there so that we can take care of issues as they arise.
So it's money that's in there that's not earmarked to be spent at this point. It's more of an insurance policy. Is that what you're saying?
Right, so this is just any maintenance that comes up for any of the town-owned properties.
Yeah, I think the rec commission had money in there, ask also
don't-
for maintenance, correct?
Can you repeat that?
I said the rec commission also had money in their ask of the town for maintenance purposes, didn't they?
That maintenance in their budget is strictly for outside maintenance at the rec area. That 5,000, that's for field maintenance or the mulch and different things that they need. This is building maintenance.
Okay.
Um, the gear that just moved into the operating budget for the fire company. And,
No. That's the hose, Mike. The hose moved into the operating.
oh, yeah, I gotta get a piece of paper so I can see. Sorry. And the gear is an increase.
Yes, they requested an increase because their numbers are going up.
Which they explained at their presentation. Then we talk about open space. We've cut that the last 3 years. We had traditionally been funding that at $10,000 per year. So what we have here is the attempt to bring that back up to where it should have been had we been funding it adequately. So discussion on that. Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
So, yes, we did fund it at 10,000 a year prior to the last couple of years. Can you tell me what's the balance? Is it around $70,000 in that line item right now? Is that
72.
correct? Say that again?
72,000.
72,000, correct. Here's my thought on this. That's a big jump, $29,000 to bring it up to 30. There's no open space right now that the town's looking at. The town, we have a lot of open space. That's one of the nicest things about the towns. We have so many trails and farms, and that's a great thing about our town. But that $29,000 could be much, I think could be much better spent at this time. I don't mind adding money to that line item, and I'm sure that the Conservation Commission wouldn't be happy with me saying what I'm saying, but I don't mind bringing that up to even $5,000 from $1,000, but not up to $30,000. I think that's way too big a jump. We have 72,000 in there now. There's no space on our radar at this point to purchase. I know that sometimes things come up, but there's nothing that's on the radar now. And I think that money could be much better spent somewhere else. We've already talked about some things that are in this in the capital lines that are, in my mind, iffy. So I would vote to not have that go up by 29,000. I would like to have it go up by no more than 4,000 to bring it to a total of 5,000.
Are you making that motion?
No, just not yet, my suggestion. till we
Oh,
discuss
okay.
it. I will
Sorry.
make that motion after I hear Nita speak.
I could go with what Bob is saying. I was going to say $10,000 because wasn't $10,000 what we usually used to give them all the time?
So Nita, would you
Yes.
compromise and say 8,000 to bring it up to an even 80?
Yeah, that's a good idea. That would be good. I mean, I don't think we want to go and give them $30,000 right off the bat or anything like that. I mean,
Well, let's be clear too. It's not really, it's not giving, well, it's going into that fund, which is not only just for conservation now, but also for if the town saw a reason, and it would have to go to town meeting anyway to spend it. So, wait,
Yeah, the line should be titled Land Acquisition Fund, not Open Space Acquisition Fund, so that's my fault. I'll fix that for the next draft, because it needs to match the ordinance that we passed on how to use that. So it's not just for open space, it's also for land for municipal use.
That's
Yeah.
correct. Thank you.
So-
Good catch.
I mean, I think we should try to be fun. I mean, we've, at least this start part of the process, I'd like to see at least 15,000, you know, I mean, we've kind of shortchanged this for the last several years. So, I mean, I guess we got to compromise somewhere here because we're kind of all in different places and.
I'll make a motion then.
Yeah.
All right, so I motion that we raise the $1,000 line item by 7,000 to bring it up to a total of 8,000, which will bring the total to $80,000 if at the end of the budget gets approved.
I'll second
Further discussion on it? All those in favor?
All right.
it.
I'll go with it.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, and then we've got the POCD. So we did not fund this last year. We know we've got the POCD coming up, and it does cost money to write our next POCD. Again, we had talked about last year trying to put some money aside, and then, of course, we went into more of a bare bones budget last year and didn't really do that. So we do have to put money aside for the POCD. Go ahead, Nita.
My recall last year, I think, is that this came from Julia. She felt she was doing very well with a lot less money than was in here, which I don't remember it was a bigger number than this. But I think that we really ought to ask her, it was my feeling, honestly.
Well, she's contributed to this conversation because she's been involved in the capital project, capital improvement work group discussions. This is the number that she put forth. I think what you're referring to is last time she basically had stated that, she plans to do a fair amount of work on the POCD versus having a lot more consulting work on it, but it still is going to cost money for what needs to be done. And this is the number that she put forth. So I don't think we ought to mess with this. We have to do it. Next year is the year. So it's got to be done every 10 years. And 2023 was the year that it should come out, but we have to do the work in order to create it. So that's, so I think we ought to leave that there, but.
I think that if that's what she put out, and it sort of rings a bell with me, that's what we should leave it at. I mean, wasn't it up to like $100,000 that year, the last year we did it? It was some huge number, I thought.
There was a big number, but I think it was the number we thought we might need to get towards. And she did say at one point she could get it done for a lot less because of some of the work that she would do on it herself. So, I don't know if this is the whole amount that will be needed for the POCD, but we definitely need to put money aside for the POCD. Go ahead, Bob.
No, Mike, I agree. 2023 is just around the corner. I mean, the next budget that we work on will be the one for 2023. So we know that if we don't have a POCD in place by the year end 2023, that we put ourselves in jeopardy of losing funding from the state. It's mandated that every town has a POCD. So I think we moved it last year. I don't think we can afford to move it this year. Hey, if we don't spend the money, that's great. And that's where Juliet will come in. But if we need to protect ourselves on that, so we're not scrambling next year, trying to come up with the funds to fund the whole thing at once.
But Bob, the only
Say that again.
The only thing I would disagree with about that is that the things that have been coming out of Hartford are really aware of the pandemic, and they've been, again, opening up tremendously to use like we can get money and at a much lower rate right now from them than we could before. So I wouldn't be too worried about them is what I'm saying. But I agree with you. I think we should stay with the $30,000 and but.
Mm-hmm. I just think that once we get beyond the pandemic, and God willing we do, and hopefully sooner instead of later, I think the politicians' memories will be short-lived and they'll just stop wanting us to be on time for things, and the pandemic will be a thing in the past. So I think we need to be prepared.
Yeah.
All right, moving on then, we've got the 1750 farmhouse. We have a number of 10,000 in there. I think we had a presentation last week where we talked about some additional work that could be done at the farmhouse. Obviously, we're going to come to our regular meeting next week with an RFP to get somebody in there to start bringing the revenue in to the house. But I think we definitely still need to put money into the house. I don't know if that number's enough based on the information that we just received. So I mean, I know Nita, you're probably the most familiar with this.
It's definitely not enough. It's probably enough for us to fix, for example, the window problem and possibly one section of roofing that is difficult, but you saw the long list of things that need to be done. I would never expect that we were going to be able to do those immediately, but I think I've already spoken to Ed Harrisonowitz about it too, and I think that what we want to do is get it at least decent enough with regards where people would be happy to go in there. So, you know, we'll pick a few, we're going to have a meeting next week, hopefully. I have spoken to them, and we're going to see what the windows, I think, would not be a terribly expensive thing to do, and we could put in a good type of other layer inside the house that's very well used in old houses, which I'll tell you, I'm not going to talk about it right now, but it's very good. And so, and we need to do a few of those things before we get people that want to walk in and look at it and say they want to be there.
So what kind of number do you want to put in there, or what would you propose?
I think that if we had another $5,000, perhaps we could get the major things done. I have to have somebody come in and look at the roofs again, but anyway.
Bob?
Just because I'm in the business, I'm thinking that, and I looked at that roof neater, and I know that there's moss and things growing on it, but there's a thing called soft wash that cleans a lot of that off. It's environmentally sound. As far as the glass replacement in the windows, pretty much any glass company can replace that glass and reputty it. So it looks like new, but not a lot of money. So I'd like to see some actual quotes on these line items. I think 10,000 is enough money. I don't know if we'll spend that, but is there any money in the Hewitt Farm account that can be used for any of this, or does the Hewitt Farm account not pay for any of this on the 1750 house?
The Hewitt Farm Committee gets a $5,000 every year for the whole Hewitt Farm, not just for the building, in other
Right,
words.
but the town realizes income from the Hewitt Farm, correct?
Oh,
Between
yes.
Bon Appetito and other things.
We've never been able to touch that. We've never been able to touch that. That's been going back to just the general thing. That would be great if we got the money that we had that comes from that. Bon Appetito comes in with over 28,000, right now it's 22,000, I think, $22,000. That would be great.
No, so I think it's just important that the town knows the kind of income that gets derived from the use of Hewitt Farm. But it's just like the school. I mean, if we have students coming from another town, the town gets the benefit of the income from the tuition, not the school. It's the same thing with Hewitt Farm. I get it. But it's good to let the townspeople know that we're not just asking for money without any return. There's return that just happens to come straight to the town, that's all.
Thank you, yes.
I mean, I'm not opposed to getting some more numbers. I'm also not opposed to increasing the line to 15, knowing that we just put a great deal into this report that we just got. And there are some things I'm sure we'd like to do there to, to make sure the property's properly spruced up. It's a great gem. It's a great piece of history for the town. And, worst case, if we don't use the 10 or the 15, it's okay.
I'm not opposed to raising it to 15 and getting quotes in just to confirm it, that's all.
Well, why don't we move it to 15 then?
That's
We
fine
agreed?
with that. Yeah.
Okay. So move that to 15. Moving down, so water sewer, I indicated at the last meeting that we had, I think the last regular meeting, that, we really don't have much funding left to try to move these initiatives forward. We did deobligate some money a couple budgets ago, and which was, prudent for us to do because it wasn't being used right away. I do think that when you talk about priorities, this is pretty important for the town and for a lot of the folks in the area that we're looking at. And there should be some funding there. Should we need consultants or lawyers that help us with the process to work with another town or whatever it might be to extend these utilities. So I think this is a pretty important line. I think 50 is a pretty conservative amount to kind of put aside for this. Go ahead, Bob.
So Mike, we had $50,000 in the budget last year, which apparently what you're saying is we've spent that money. That was for the studies.
So last year, I'm not sure if we put 50,000 in last year. I think it was 2 years ago, right? Is that right, Christine?
I thought it was last year.
It was FY 20, we're currently in FY 21, and we use that money for the Weston and Sampson report.
So it wasn't last year.
Okay.
It wasn't the year we're in right now. It was the year prior. So I maybe we're saying the same thing.
All right, so what you're saying is, you're saying $50,000 for infrastructure. Now, we as a Board of Selectmen have constantly gone back to the POCD for our guidance, correct? And if you look at page 60 in the POCD, there was a survey done that says, would you vote for an increase in taxes to fund the following? And one of the line items says sewers to encourage business development. And the POCD vote went 58% no, 42% yes. So the town then, in a fairly wide margin, it was the widest margin of any of the votes, said no to sewers to encourage business development. So I think if the development paid for the sewers, if the companies that come in and pay for sewers, be one thing, but to pay for sewers to attract business, the town spoke at the last POCD firmly to say, no, they're not willing to do that. So if we always go by, here, page 60, if we always go by the POCD to give us guidance, then why aren't we going by the POCD now?
So I don't see this as money to pay for sewers, Bob. I think we've always been working towards the landowners bearing the brunt of those costs. The problem is going to be that there's going to be, whether it's engineers or lawyers or whomever has to help us to get through whatever needs to be done for the landowners to actually bear the brunt of the cost. And it's not just sewer, it could be water. And we know for a fact that there's right now, I mean, we're in the process, as I said at the last meeting, of 3 property owners getting water. They need it for their business. The town is going to have a role in that. Now, we don't have to put 50,000 in there, but I think we should put something in there because I think it's important that we do have some level of funding for this.
But we just did, whether it be last year or the year before, we just spent $50,000 on sewer studies, and it wasn't the first sewer study we did as a town. So and this POCD goes back to 2013. So since 2013, we've put quite a bit of money into the study of sewers, and the town in 2013 voted not to put a lot of money towards the study.
It's not just sewer, Bob. It's water too.
But the sewers is the bigger number, isn't it?
Water is the most pressing issue right now. Sewer isn't even necessarily on the docket. Water is the thing that's coming down the pike, no pun intended, right away. I mean, that's actually going to happen. So there's going to be attorneys that are going to need to be involved because it's complex and we need experts that'll kind of help us navigate that. Now, I'm not saying that we need 50,000. I mean, that's what we put in here because that's kind of what we had put last time we invested in here. But I think it would be irresponsible to not put something aside. And on the water side, I mean, if you would prefer that we reterm it and take sewer out of the line and just make a new line item just for water, that's okay too. I think that's the most immediate thing that's going to come up.
Maybe that would be a good idea, but also at a much lower number than $50,000.
Nita, what's your thoughts on this?
I don't know, we've been looking at this for so many years, and it doesn't seem like we're getting anywhere. I truly have a hard time deciding. I never wanted to have, honestly, a sewer in our town when we moved here. It was just very disappointing. However, I definitely now see that something like where we are down on 49 there and everything like that, I certainly think that we ought to be able to do something with water. I don't know about sewer. To me, sewer is not my favorite.
Well, part of what's going to happen is there's going to be an update to the whole sewer plan anyway, I think. So why don't we just create a different line that's just for water for your comfort level, which is kind of the opposite of what it was 3 years ago. We actually created this line because we were trying to make sure there was funding for the water situation, which has become more of the prominent and dominant discussion. So we could just create a different line that's for water, and, you know, we could put 25,000 in it instead of 50.
So Mike, when you said water was coming down the pike, you meant what, the discussion about it was coming down, or we actually had some sort of agreement, or do we have a way to get water? What do we mean?
I updated the board on this last meeting in great detail, but basically we have 3 property owners that they need water for their businesses. There's an agreement that Westerly's willing to provide it, and that Westerly needs another water source. And I said, that's the discussion that's going to have to take place in the future, and maybe the near future, maybe months, year from now, I don't know. But the fact is they are willing to provide it. The property owners are willing to pay for it. But I'm telling you that there's going to need to be some level of town involvement in this intermunicipal agreement. And it's going to take, it's going to take an attorney. I don't know that we're going to have to pay for any engineering, probably not. That's all going to be borne by the property owners. And I think there's got to be discussion about what the town's role is in the water business. I think, where do we want to be in this? Do we just want to be a supplier to Westerly, who already has the infrastructure? I don't want to get too far off on the weeds on this. All I'm saying is we need to put some money aside for this topic. It's a topic that's going to come up, and I don't want to get the town to get caught without having any funding to be able to address these things. So, I'd propose we just create a new line, and we'll just put 25,000 in it. Any opposition to that?
That money will be spent after discussion with the, either at a town meeting or further discussion with, and we won't spend the money without having discussion on it.
No, that money will be in capital. So if we need to spend it for the water efforts, we will spend it. I would bring it to the Board of Selectmen to talk about it, but it wouldn't go any further. It wouldn't go to a town meeting. Now, I think there has to be greater discussion when you talk about supplying another municipality with water, and then whether they sell it to us or we have to have a very, very large discussion as a town. What do we want? Where do we want to be in the water, in this whole water thing? And we need to have that discussion, because water is the greatest commodity there is. And there is some in North Stonington. So, but it's going to take investment for North Stonington to be a player. And an investment might be a smart thing to do. I'm not proposing any of that right now, but I am saying that that's something that needs to come up. It probably needs to come up in the POCD process, probably sooner than that. And, maybe there's some community conversations, and hopefully once COVID's behind us, we can, get together and have more discussions. This will get us going anyway for the more immediate stuff. Yes, Nita.
This is probably stupid, but I do need to ask a question. Remember the gas station, remember the water there. What happened to all of that?
It's under appeal, last I knew. I know.
Are we not sorry that we let that go that way? Would that not be useful to us? It's not far from that area.
You're talking about a piece of property?
Yeah.
I think if we could buy a piece of property in that area, it would be very beneficial to the town. But
We never should have given it away to the gas station thing.
I don't think
we all.
No, I don't.
Go ahead.
There's property. There has been a piece of property for sale in the area. I don't know. That's another discussion.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So why don't we just make a new line, water infrastructure? Is there any opposition to a $25,000 number to put in there?
No,
Okay.
as long as it has to be approved, I'm good.
Well, I just want to make sure though, like we don't have to have consensus. Here's what I want. I guess I should say this right now. We don't have to agree on everything. We're not going to agree on everything. But what we're talking about right now is going to go into a budget that is going to be presented to the Board of Finance that we are going to agree on because we are putting it together as a group.
Mhm.
So we've all disagreed on certain lines, but what I don't want to happen is us contradict. I don't want us to go to a meeting where we're contradicting each other in front of the Board of Finance. We have to be unified on the fact that we put the budget together. I don't agree with some decisions that have been made. I know you guys don't, but too bad. We all come together in it, okay? I just want to make sure. So when you say, Bob, that it's got to be approved, we're going to approve it. Then
No,
Board
I'm
of
not
Finance.
talking about that, Mike. I'm talking about if we agree to put it into the budget
Yeah.
before the money is spent, you bring it back to the Board of Selectmen for approval before it's spent. That's all.
You have my word that I will do that.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking.
But that's my word. I'm only here for another 8 months, and I'm just the way it works is that money to be spent out of capital doesn't generally have to come back to the Board of Selectmen for an approval. I just want to be clear about that.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on. We have the financial software. So this is to get us on the same software as the school, which is going to be incredibly helpful in our reconciliation efforts. Right now we're on QuickBooks and the school had to go on a new software. They were forced to this year because their software was sunsetted. At the time, we had no money to go on to the same software with them. We had nothing put aside to do it. My recommendation is that we move forward with the same software as the school. It'll help us from a collaborative effort. It'll help us to all be on the same page a lot better. It'll help us a lot more for reporting. And in order to, what I am also going to propose as bringing the software on, because I think this software offers supposedly it offers some transparency for the community. So we would get rid of OpenGov. I know that, there's been a lot of people who don't seem to be fond of OpenGov anyway. This could do that job and it would replace like our QuickBooks. And so this is a really smart move, in my opinion, to get more collaboration between the board, between the town and the school as well. So that'll help us out. And I know the auditor will probably be happy about it as well. So that's the number we have on what that software is going to cost. Any questions or discussion on that?
I would just say that I've heard nothing but good things about that software. I think it's a wise move. I was going to ask if we brought that software on, if we could get rid of OpenGov because there's no need to have a duplication. Puts us on the same page as the school, which makes sense. Now the town's all on the same software. And again, I've heard rave reviews, and I also heard the auditor speak about the software. I don't think it was this year's, last year's meeting. So I think that would be wise for the town to do that.
Okay. Then we've got flight and mapping. So one of the things that we have lacked is
You skipped the furniture for the school, which I was going to say remove anyway. So go ahead. $15,000 for school for the North Stonington Education Center furniture.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so basically, at least my thought was that room was to be kind of like our chambers for the town, for lack of a better word. When we come back to meeting in person, that space is going to be where all the town meetings or the meetings take place, including ours. And so we should outfit it with furniture that actually makes sense and outfit the room properly. So, I mean, I would like to see us do that. I think we should definitely do that.
My guy would agree with you if the outcome is that both wings get leased out and the town still has use of that room, that doesn't become part of the lease agreement or part of, as you mentioned, a possible sale of the buildings down the road where we wouldn't even possibly not even have use of that room. We want to use that room for voting in the future, I believe. So I'm all for making that some sort of more of an auditorium feel to it, even though it's all on one level, not I'm not sunken, but it's I'd love that to be our main meeting space for town meetings and so on. But I think we have to see what the outcome is on those buildings first before we spend money on furniture, only to find out that whoever just leased or bought the building wants that space, and we no longer can use it. So I just think it's putting the cart before the horse a little bit as far as that furniture. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'd love to go in there and see a lot of chairs and a semicircle that we could leave set up all the time, so we're not constantly setting things up, taking them down, and so on. And it's a perfect meeting space with plenty of parking. So I hope it comes to fruition, but I don't think spending the money for the furniture makes sense now before we.
So I agree with you that we shouldn't spend the money until we know what's going on, but this is the budget cycle that we're in. So in other words, I would like to be optimistic that we will have a lesser for the building, and that if we didn't budget for it in this budget, then we would be waiting a whole nother year to try to outfit the building. My suggestion is that we leave that in there. And of course, if we don't have a commitment, then we don't spend the money on it. We just don't use it. And my commitment that I certainly wouldn't do that until we had some level of clarity with what's going on at the building. But I think it makes sense to at least put it in there.
Understood.
Any opposition to leaving it there?
I have no opposition as long as we're not buying furniture until we know what the outcome is.
And I think we'll see what the Board of Finance comes back with on some of these things, obviously.
Okay, so we'll leave that there. The flight and mapping, we haven't really been doing that, and we really need to. That gives us valuable data for not only tax assessment, but also from a zoning perspective, to be able to see, have updated maps in our systems. This is something we should be doing and hadn't been doing. So we would like to start budgeting for that in capital. Any opposition to leaving that?
No.
Revaluation, again, that's monies that we have to put aside towards our next reval. And that's what we've been doing year after year, is putting monies aside for the revals as they come along, because it is an expensive proposition. Any opposition to that?
No.
And, I skipped over the radio replacement. That was the fire company's request. I think we asked questions about that at their presentation. Is there any opposition to leaving that in there?
No, I'm satisfied with the fire company's discussion on that.
All right, that takes us through capital. As I would, so we can go through starting on page 1. I don't know if we want to, just to mention this, I had asked the emergency operations group to report back to us. They are planning to come to our next meeting. I don't know if our board wants to hold off on discussing the ambulance and fire budgets until after we've heard from them. I'm not sure that it would have any bearing on that, but given it looks like the schedule it sounds like it may change anyway a little bit, and we probably don't need to present our budget at the next meeting. So I think we have a little bit of extra time. So is there any, you guys want to just skip over those two budgets, and then we can talk about them after that meeting next Tuesday?
Yeah, when are they going to present to us, Mike, at next Tuesday's meeting?
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to be done with their work, but I asked them to come up and give us an update, because I mean, the reason we appointed this committee was to help us, like in this to talk about the budgets and stuff like that. So they are going to come to us next Tuesday with some information.
Yeah, I'd be willing to wait.
Okay, so we can wait on those two. So besides those, we can just kind of go through page 1. I think Christine already talked about, obviously we're talking about revenue. And so there will be an addition of at this point, there'll be an addition of revenue for that truck. So we'll add that in there because that's money that we know will exist.
Now,
Reimbursement for the EV truck?
Yes,
Okay.
now, Mike.
yes.
The very first line here about the 15,000, excuse me, 15 million, I can't use that word. 15,340,000 is going to be the same. This is just planted there, but aren't we going to have more money than this?
So, no changes. The current general property tax, because we don't like to make any adjustments to that until we know what the budget number for expenditures is going to look like, because we don't know what the mill rate would be and what it would need to be to offset the expenditure increases. So this is last year's number.
I know exactly.
So that has not changed.
And we don't want to put anything else in because okay. All
I
right.
think it's a conservative approach. And I don't think that hurts us. I mean, it hurts us because, we need to sharpen our pencil a little bit more, but I think it's conservative from a spending perspective, so.
So I don't know if we want to start with A3, Intergovernmental Revenues, if anyone has any questions on any of this. We were given the estimate of 5 students from the Board of Ed for tuition. If we get anything in writing from them as to a higher number that's been discussed, then we can update that for a 3.05 tuition reimbursement.
Okay. What was the Mashantucket Pequot and Mohegan Fund? Why was it up so much, and is it accurate?
It's not up so much. For some reason, the OpenGov doesn't report out the right numbers. I don't know. For certain.
So we don't know really what they are.
No, the 880,690 is an accurate number.
Okay.
The what's budgeted is the accurate number. But I think it's that we get that last payment so late.
Yeah.
That it doesn't show up in these actuals.
Okay, got
Because
it.
they're scheduled to make that payment, I think, on June 30th.
Okay. And
Was that the 55,000 for Boombridge? Is that the final money left over that we did not spend in the 316,000 that we appropriated for that project?
No, this is just what was left in that line from potential reimbursements through the year. So we zeroed it out because we know we will have no more reimbursement coming next year.
okay.
So that was just a carried forward number from prior years.
So the money that wasn't spent, I guess it's not income, right? Because we just didn't spend it. For the Boombridge project came in less money than what we appropriated, correct?
Correct. So that, I think we had budgeted to de-obligate anything this current year that's left in that line. So that no de-obligation is in this budget, which we can get to later.
I wish I'd brought my ruler. What about the license permits conveyance tax?
We increased that by $8,000 because the town clerk has been collecting more funds.
Okay, so that's good.
Yes.
Great, wonderful, okay. And this one, another one down here that I looked at, okay. Planning and zoning, and it went up to 2,500.
Yes, that was what Juliet felt it could be increased to.
Okay, all right. And, okay, now at the very bottom of this page, we have the Board of Education there, North Stonington Education, and we have the money there.
Yes, so that number represents 13% of what we've budgeted for utilities because they will be using 13% of the square footage of the building, and that's the agreement that we came to with the board.
Farmhouse. Okay, okay, so we are going to go ahead with the budget, assuming that we are getting somebody who will be using that. Is that correct?
We have no money in revenue budgeted for the building. Now,
Besides the board.
besides the Board of Ed, yeah, we know the Board of Ed's obviously going to be there, so they're paying just their share of the utilities, which has already been agreed upon in discussions. But we haven't put any more revenue in this budget before you. I mean, if between now and we get too far, I mean, hopefully, we'll end up having some revenue that we could put in there. But right now we put nothing else in there. And this is all other revenue from, from other income sources. And we did put some money in for the Gallup House. I mean, I think we need to assume some income from that house now. I'm not sure exactly where, that'll lie, but I feel like that's a pretty conservative number. Rental wise.
The
6,000.
Oh, you guys added $1,000.
You and I never talked about it. Mike and I came up with a $6,000 number.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the equivalent of $500 a month. Like if we're renting it to a normal person, they should be paying a lot more than that. Obviously, we don't know the situation we're going to be in, but that seems like a pretty reasonable, very conservative number.
All right, yeah.
Okay, any other questions on page 1?
Going back to A 5.08 on the tanker truck, so it was in last year's budget to sell, we didn't sell it yet. Are we hoping to sell it before next year's budget, is that it? Because I think Charlie said the new truck's coming in around March. So we're hoping to get rid of this in this fiscal year, is that it? So that's why you took it out of next budget, okay. Thank you,
Yeah, we should see that revenue this year.
thank you.
Anything else on page?
Yeah, other questions on page 1?
No.
Right?
Okay.
Can you go over A 5.19?
A,
Yes, so when looking at the projects that are currently in existence in capital, there really aren't anything that should be deobligated that we aren't, there's nothing in existence that can truly be deobligated next year. There are some things that we put in the budget to deobligate the current year, which we will do before the year's over. Once we know that the numbers are final from Boombridge and a couple other things. But there really weren't other projects that we could deobligate, and as a rule, we should probably get away from that, using that as a revenue source. So that's why that line is zeroed out.
okay.
Okay, we've went through most of this page already, except for a couple maybe minor changes. I'm sorry, Anita, I jumped over you, go ahead.
It's okay, I was looking at B6, tax collector, full-time position.
Oh, that note just needs to be removed.
Okay.
The salary number is correct, but I guess I missed that. note.
Okay, I
So
knew,
will fix that right now.
I saw it in the other place and I was
Sorry.
wondering, okay, thank you. And,
On B 9.01, travel recognition, I'm wondering if we're comfortable leaving that at 5. I know we used to put 25,000 a year into it, then we dropped it down to 15 and then 10 and 5. With the change in the administration nationally, is that something that we might want to put a little bit more money back in and maybe get it back up to $10,000?
I think we put it in here somewhere, didn't we, again?
No, it's 5,000.
Nita, what's your feeling on it? B901, Bob suggesting to go to 10,000 on it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
I don't see the need, but I'm not gonna side against you guys, so that's fine. We can do that.
Sort of one of those better safe than sorry kind of things.
You can always do an additional appropriation if the need arises, if you don't want to put the money in the budget.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think Bob and Nita mentioned they want to up it, Christine, so we'll just put the 10 in there. Any other questions on this page?
I don't have any.
No, no.
Page 3. So this is,
I didn't find anything on the next page at all. Because it's all rep. No, it isn't all rep, but
did we increase the attorney for planning and zoning? That's not on this page.
That's on B35.
Yeah, it's not that line. Okay. Okay.
Would the board entertain re-looking at the position of the part-time person for the Economic Development Commission?
I mean, I'm not closed-minded to looking at a position for the town to help with some things, but I don't see it as an economic development position, Bob. And I don't think that we have enough information to move that forward anyways, probably this budget cycle, but
Okay.
Nita, what do you think?
I think that we should leave it the way we have it now. It's a better way to leave it, I think.
To eliminate, leave that position eliminated, Nita?
Yeah, I do think so. When I saw it being, thought about with the EDC, when they put it together, it wasn't together. It wasn't together. There wasn't a real plan of any sort. I don't know, maybe you heard something I didn't.
Well, I just felt that they, do you remember when they had a part-time person prior? And I know his job description was a little bit different than this one, because I think he was working more hand in hand with Juliet on bigger projects. This would be, I see this person as someone that's doing the day-to-day activity that the board members can't do because they're doing their regular 40-hour-week jobs. The Economic Development Commission in the last couple of years has got a lot of new members, people I respect. They've had a lot of, they have a lot of new ideas, and I just don't see, like any board, you get people come up with great ideas on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and then 2 weeks later you meet again and nothing really happened, because there's no one there to actually put the emphasis on getting these things done on a daily basis. So I just felt that it was not a lot of money to spend on what might be a good return on investment. And I equated it to the somewhat to the grant writer, which I don't know if I was 100% for the grant writer, but obviously I was wrong, because that person is brought in, that position has brought in monies to the town that well exceeds what we pay to have the grant writer. So that was my feeling on it, and I just didn't know whether you wanted to revisit it. That's all.
When I look at boards that we would want to invest more monies in, I would look at boards. I kind of disagree with you, Bob, because I think a lot of the boards are all volunteer, or whether it's elected or appointed, it doesn't matter. But I think, some of them are getting a lot done, and it's just a matter of, like, if we were going to put money on a board, I'd rather see us invest in some of the boards that are already getting a lot done, so we get even more done. You know what I mean? So, and besides that, I just don't see this position based on the analysis that myself, Juliet, and Christine did last year, which we were tasked to do. This didn't come up as a need. When we talk about things that we need in that area, which is land use, I mean, zoning is an area which we are trying to expand on because we need more help there. Now, that may free up Juliet to do more things. And to me, it was all about just data. I mean, like, it's the most basic thing for me was that we've been in the tops for economic development indicators for the last, I don't know, 10 years or 15 years or something. So if we're already having success there, that's not where I see us investing money, even though it's not a large amount. But as you've said already in this process, like, we have to, it's looking at every line. So, I mean, I don't see a change there.
I think that if I could put a picture in my mind of what this person would be doing and who would be working with them, it might make a difference. But I think I couldn't get any of that. I truly was listening as hard as I could to figure out what this person would do. There was no idea of exactly what kind of a person it would be. Young, old, I mean, I just couldn't see where it was going.
I mean, regardless of that, even if there was a great presentation, which I didn't think there was either, I couldn't see it based on the analysis that we've done as leadership in in town. It didn't fit into what we thought was an immediate need. I will mention that we skipped over, you guys had asked about the assessor's office. Is that something you wanted to talk about?
I asked about that, and I think that's going to be something that's probably not going to maybe get addressed in this particular budget. I think it's something that needs to be addressed at the town hall level. Just as you said, Mike, it would have been nice if we could have got the person or the company in to go through the town hall and see what made sense as far as how our day-to-day activities in the town hall went. And I was all for that, and I wished I got approved, but it didn't. So yeah, I think it's always good to look inward and make sure that we're giving the taxpayer the best bang for their buck when it comes to expenses in town hall. I think our town hall works pretty well. I think we have a lot of good, dedicated people there. I think they work good as a team. And I just think that's this coming year, I think it's something we're just gonna have to look at. It may not happen in this budget, but I can see maybe a consolidation coming down the road after that.
Well, you did task me with getting information, which I did do. And I did have conversations with the staff as you asked me to.
Oh, perfect.
Neither staff member was surprised by the discussion because it's something we have brought up in the past. I don't think anyone's looking to go part-time necessarily. I did do an analysis based on the same towns that I did the analysis of when I was doing the first Selectmen analysis 2 years ago, and looking at towns that were similar in size and square miles. And it does look like we are towards the top in our compensation in that office. Not at the top, not at the very top, but I think we're second from the top. I will also say that it was pointed out to me that, like, for instance, if I didn't look this up, but I had heard there was a part-time assessor position in another town that was part-time, that was making more than the assessor makes now here in our town. So, I mean, I think I have some information, and I just got this analysis done today. So I can forward this to you guys for further discussion if you want to talk more about it next meeting.
That'd be a good idea, Mike.
Okay.
I will say this. Let me just say this about our tax assessor's office. We've got very knowledgeable people in that office. And I think that with years of experience, and whenever you have people that have been in office for years and years, and obviously everybody usually get incremental increases over the years, and it's bound to have, it's like teachers when they're all on the top step. It just happens that your payroll's high, and then when they retire, you get to go down to the lower steps when you rehire younger people. So, but I think that we're blessed to have the people we have in that office. And if there's some way down the road that we could even maybe delegate some of that knowledge and those hours to other departments that maybe would need additional time. I mean, I think the knowledge in that office is not just for that office, but in the town in general. It's a lot of general knowledge that maybe they could help in other ways. So when I talk about that, it wasn't to talk about removing any people. It'd be more to maybe redistribute some of that knowledge to other areas in the town hall, that's all.
Well, I mean, I think we have a responsibility as a board to look at these things, right? I mean, I don't think anyone that pays attention in town wouldn't question the same things, and we're the elected officials forced to have these conversations. So I don't have any problem with you guys bringing it up. So I'll forward you the info and we can talk more about it next week if you want. But what this actually makes me think, do you guys want to budget? This would be the time for the consultant. I mean, we didn't get it done because we didn't get Board of Finance approval last year. We didn't have it budgeted, but we can budget for it and we can do it this year. And I mean, maybe the company that we selected would honor the price. Maybe they wouldn't, but we already went through this whole process, and why not put $25,000 in there, which we all thought was pretty short money for what we were going to get for that. You guys want to add that into the capital budget?
Don't you think they'd fly right out again?
Well, I mean, this is our budget to construct. So if we think it's a value, we should put it in there and defend it. I mean, we all agreed it was a value. Not only did we agree, the key staff members agreed as well that this would have been a very helpful thing for us. I mean, I see great value in this, as I did when we presented it back, just several months ago. And I think it would be helpful to, the next first selectman as well.
I think that I'd be willing to wait until the next first selectman. I think in this particular, it was already turned down by the town. This budget, in my eyes, has got a lot in it. We want to get accomplished.
It was turned down by
Not turned down by the town, but voted down, right? We weren't approved for the monies, correct?
Well, just the Board of Finance didn't approve.
Right. So, well, I guess what I'm saying is we've got a lot of ask in this budget. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts, and I think at this point we should not be adding anything additional to the budget. As far as a new position, a new line item, we changed the line item from water and sewer just to water, but just to create a new line item at this time, I'm not so sure I want to do that.
Nita, what do you think?
I don't think now's the time to do it. I don't think it is.
I disagree with you both. I think now is the time to do it because if you don't do it now, it won't be in the budget, so that the next person could potentially have the ability to say yes or no. They won't have that ability until the following budget cycle. And then I think one of the things that's kind of just forgotten is that by the time you get to the next budget cycle, the person's already on the other side of their term. It's a short 2 years. I mean, it feels like eternity sometimes, but it is a short 2 years. I mean, I'd advocate for putting it in there, but if there's not support, then
I can't support it right now, Mike. I'm sorry.
okay. Moving on. All right, so I think we can move to rec. Is there anything that you guys want? Anything you wanted to look at in rec, page 3, B1601 and further?
No, I'm good with it.
Nita, you good moving through? Is Rec's proposal was pretty reasonable?
Oh, yeah, I think it's basically not mostly our money, so it's perfectly fine.
Okay. I think we already went through like the insurance lines. I don't think there's much there. I'm not sure there's much else on this page to discuss then.
No.
Christine, anything you wanted to hit on or?
No, I made the changes that we discussed from the last, so everything is reflecting what we
Okay.
talked about.
All right.
I just, I had circled one of them in there, which was the town insurance one.
Yeah.
The B20, and it went from $94,000 since, and then down to 70,000, and then to 58,000, and now it's jumped up to 82,935. Why is it like that with the insurance?
I have to go back to QuickBooks from prior years.
Okay,
I'll have to look.
okay, it just seems so. We have had a lot of new people, I think, in some of the, in the highway department.
This isn't medical insurance, this is the town's lap policy and.
Sorry, okay.
And
that
then
is-
the special insurance we have to get for Karen as for the tax collector and those kinds of
Oh,
things.
that
This
kind
isn't,
of
this
thing.
isn't,
Nothing to do with the people.
no, that's
Okay,
under,
okay, we'll get to the other one.
medical insurance.
Yes, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, okay. And.
All right, can we move to page 5?
Mhm.
We did talk a fair amount about this page at our last meeting too, I believe.
Mike, I don't understand the 2206, why you're carrying such a large number in that, in the North Carolina Education Center, on the expense line of 150,000. Now, we're hoping that by the time we get to next year's budget, which is this summer, right, in June, we're gonna have a pretty good handle on it, that hopefully by no later than the fall, I think you put a 4 to 5 month time frame on that subcommittee that you wanted to form, which would bring us to the summer. And yeah, why is it that we're carrying such a large number for expense for next year's budget?
Well, the expenses are the expenses for the building, and that's what we assume the expenses are for the building, but they're going to be offset by revenue if all goes well offset by revenue. We'll be making money on the building, but those are the expenses, and those are just for utilities, for, items that would be, contract maintenance type items. This isn't anything, because that's now that we have pretty good, a pretty good handle on what the expenses are. That's what the expenses are.
So we'll have that offset by revenues, hopefully. Is that what you're saying?
We have to. I mean,
to offset that.
I'm in agreement with, if the fact is by summer comes along and we don't have a good, not even that. I mean, I think the Board of Finance was pretty clear, they wanted to see from January, I think they said, whatever, 5 months or something. If it gets to be May, and we don't really have a good prospect, I think in my opinion, we start having the conversation about looking to sell the building, have that conversation for a couple months. And then if it's not looking good, then maybe we talk about the demo, to get rid of the expense so this expense isn't as bad next winter, Bob. That's
right. I guess because you're not seeing a revenue line next to the expense line. So, but somewhere in here to hopefully be a revenue line. The one thing I would caution you on, and it's for another topic for another day, is I think we would need to sit down with the real library and just make sure we know what we're doing when we say we can sell the building. I want to make sure that our ducks are in the row and there's no reason why we can't, that there's anything in that deed restriction that says that we don't have the ability as a town to sell the building. So it's nothing for tonight, but I think it's something we need to look at. So
there's a lot of conversations that have to be had. I mean, I think we've tried to be transparent and have these conversations. I mean, we've gone, in my opinion, above and beyond to include the town as much as possible in these discussions, because there's a great interest in it. And the Wheeler Library, certainly, obviously, we want everybody to be included. So I mean, in theory, Bob, I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to say we're not going to go through, if we don't have tenancy in the building, I wouldn't want to see us holding that expense.
Mm-hmm.
If we do have tenancy in the building, we should have a revenue that offsets that expense.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, should be making money. So I think that's the wise number to put in there right now.
I agree with you. I think it's a worst case scenario, which we have to be prepared for just in case. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, with any luck, as we go through this budget process, maybe with any luck, maybe we have a revenue number that we can put in there, a week or 2 or 3 weeks from now. I mean, that might be maybe too optimistic, but if we get somebody who comes forward, maybe we've got something that might make sense to put in there. So any other discussions on the page 5 with regards to any of the charitable contributions? Anything, troopers, anything on here you want to talk about?
With regards to the, to the ones that we were giving money to, the United Community and Family Services, that's a strange number. Why are they asked for that money at that kind of 6849?
Yes, let me open up their
What was
request.
the,
Hold on.
They base it. I'm sorry, go ahead, Christine.
I think it's based on the amount of the population that they serve.
oh,
And it's the percentage of their budget based on the percentage of people that they serve.
okay.
But let me just double check.
And that's what we call,
I think that's one that if there was only one to look at, it probably is that one, because they have come in with pretty heavy asks every year, and we have not given to that amount. But I think it's worthy of you guys looking at the request and their justification for that number.
Yeah, so if I can just read a snippet from their letter. North Stonington residents continue to turn to UCFS to help meet their health care needs. During fiscal year 2019-2020, UCFS provided 407 visits to 69 unduplicated North Stonington residents at a cost of over $66,000. Based on a conservative estimate of increases in need and operating costs, UCFS anticipates the cost of care for North Stonington residents for the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 will total over $68,000. This is based on a conservative projected increase of 1% in visits and 3% in costs. UCFS therefore requests North Stonington to include $6,849 in its FY22 budget to offset the cost of uncompensated care provided directly to North Stonington residents.
wow. I didn't even know that. That's very good.
Selectmen, I have uploaded all of the requests from the charitable groups to that page in OpenGov. So if you want to view any of them, they're all in there.
Oh, good. Okay. Otherwise, I didn't see anything different.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to talk about on this page 5?
Nope.
All right. Page 6.
So Mike, when I
Well-
was looking at the POCD, I was looking for the specific information I talked about earlier on the sewers. I came upon on that, just coincidentally on the same page under facilities and services, it said, with the exception of the emergency services and the need for a new dog pound, the existing community facilities are operating effectively. They actually put in there a need for a new dog pound. Now, I know that we're working on something now, you've been working on something now as a nonprofit, maybe a way to raise money for the property over in Winterchog, and I understand that, but I'm thinking that particular line item in general, we have the animal control officer line item. Without mentioning any individuals, that particular line item requires an awful lot of around-the-clock attention. We have it as a part-time position. I'm advocating that we possibly discuss that as maybe being a full-time position, only because what I see posted and what I hear and the way that we tug that position around in general as a town, we're a town known as being a town with animals, right? We've got probably more different species of animals in our town than any town around us. And this particular department doesn't always get called for pets. It's not just cats and dogs, it's cows and sheep and birds and goats and you name it. So I'm thinking that we might want to just look at that position and think about maybe making it a full-time position.
And I'm definitely in the same thought myself, very much so. Because I've seen it, I've seen the work she's done, the person's done, but we are a very different type of town with our animals. And I think that the person who takes care of it, it's a very big job, and I think that it would be wonderful for the person to have a full-time job as opposed to, because I think it is a full-time job.
So I think with regards to this discussion, my opinion is that we should have a discussion about the employee in an executive session, and she could be invited into that executive session per law. I think we have to have some more details to have a discussion like this, and I think it's only appropriate to probably have her in that discussion, and that should not be done in public meeting unless she requests it to be that way. So,
All right, so I suggest that we do that, then we bring this to the next level of discussion by going to executive session with an invite by the person that holds the position now, and also discuss the assistant's position and how that would be changed or maybe not changed if the main position goes to full time. So
we can add that to the next agenda.
I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. No, thank you. What else on this page that, let's see, anything? Obviously we've got the fire company's staffing request, but I think I said we're going to wait and talk about that until the next meeting. Anything else in highway that you guys wanted to talk? We did talk about highway last meeting. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Because we addressed capital tonight, which is the biggest part of what I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Like when we finish up on this, as I've been sitting here thinking about it, I'm willing to, if you want to go back and revisit the what you were talking about earlier, I think I would decide to back you on that, as far as going back and looking at the proposal to bring a group in to look at the town hall. And I mean, you can't have it both ways. I can't, on one hand, saying that we need to look at ourselves, look inward to make sure that we're doing everything right, that the taxpayers get the bang for the buck, and then saying that we shouldn't spend the money on it. I mean, I agreed when you said that if we didn't do it in this budget and we have to wait till next year, then we're already a year and a half from now, basically. So if you want to revisit that when we get done with the budget, I'll be glad to go back and discuss that some more with you.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the consultant. I mean, I think it does make sense. It would be a good tool in the toolbox for the next first selectman to have that data, because that, whether you wanted to actually mobilize the consultant at the beginning of the fiscal year, which I think would be a good idea, just to have the data ready for the next person to come in. And plus, like, you know, I think the struggle is, the reason we talked about this last time, is that as much as I make suggestions, you know, sometimes they're not always heard. So I think a third party making suggestions that might be completely different than the suggestions that I'm making, totally fine. I think it's a good idea. So, I mean, I think we would put 25,000 in capital for the purpose of, and we could line, you know, it'd just be a line for,
We call
Would we
the RF department review.
yeah, okay, department review consulting. So, Bob, if you, I mean, Nita, would you, I mean, I don't know if we want to.
I don't feel strongly about it, and if you and Bob both would like to do that, yeah, I'd go along with it. I really don't feel strongly about it one way or the other.
Well, I think as I thought about it, Anita, Mike's announcing that he wasn't rerunning. We know there's going to be, no matter who it is, there's going to be a change in first selectman, unless he has a change of heart again, he runs again and wins again. But at this point, it looks like the writing on the wall is that we're going to have a change. So if we had stability where the same people were managing that were managing the last 2 or 3 years. I think we could look into it as a group and do it ourselves. But I think the fact that there's going to be a change, that person will possibly need help in that way, because it's probably going to be someone that hasn't been in the town hall. If they've been working somewhere else, doing something else, they haven't been around, so they don't know the inner workings. And by the time they figure it out, now we have another year down the road. So because of the situation, I think that's why I'm thinking that maybe an outside set of eyes looking in makes sense. That's all.
As long as we're talking on that for a minute, could I jump over to the salary for the first selectman? It seems that if we run for, if you're not running and it's going to be somebody else, do we leave that kind of a salary? I mean, a lot of people who have spoken about wanting to be here want to do it on a half a day or something like that. I mean, I would be very surprised if we were going to give a person that much money if they would, you know. How do you
I don't think
handle
anyone understands the responsibility unless they've sat in the chair. And, you know, even my predecessor, probably my biggest critic, publicly stated it just was too stressful. And that's why he didn't do it again. And granted, we had Nick for, 30 years, and the world is different since then. I mean, it's not the same position. You're paying somebody for the responsibility of this position. You're paying somebody that's going to have to be available all the time, at any time, for any reason. I strongly disagree with reducing the salary. I totally agree with increasing the salary so we get more qualified people that would consider doing it. I mean, obviously, whatever everybody wants to do is fine, but I did some pretty serious analysis about this last budget cycle. I think we're underfunding it. I think we're underfunding the selectmen's positions. I think we'll get more qualified people. Just because somebody's willing to, they think I'd like to do this because it's for whatever reason, like it's a huge responsibility. That person should be compensated for that responsibility. And I think we could potentially get more qualified applicants if we paid more. So I would definitely oppose reducing the salary. I would definitely advocate. I mean, I was shot down last time. I would advocate for an increase in the salary. Again, saying I'm not running for the position again. I'm just saying I want to see good people step up. And I think the other thing that could be considered, and we could discuss it, is increasing the salary, and you could remove the position from the pension. Currently the first selectman is in the pension program. It's a generous pension program that the town has, and just for the benefit of those on the call, it's not a pension program that we have some liability like the state does for billions of years into the future. Like, we contribute into it on a year-to-year basis, so there's no long-term liability sitting out there, but it is generous. And if you remove the person from the pension, you could increase the salary. I think that's not a bad thing to think about. I would advocate for doing that and increasing the salary by the same amount.
We had the discussion on the salaries. I'm happy with the 2% increase across the board at this point. I don't think we need to revisit it at this time.
Nita, you brought it up. Did you want to recommend any other changes?
No.
Okay. You guys know where I'm at. All right, so we're on page.
Do we agree on that? Putting the money back in the line item for the to have someone come in and look at the town, and has that been approved? Do we put that back in? I know we discussed it. Anita kind of said we just kind of left it off, right? Then she changed the topic a little bit on us.
Yeah, she said she wasn't opposed to it, so we can add it back in.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure. Okay, thank you.
I would like to contact the company if we are adding it in to see if they would honor their proposal, so we don't have to go through that whole process again. We already made the decision. We liked the company. Maybe they would be willing to kind of hang around for a few more months, and knowing that we're trying to budget for it. So I will make that call. Not committing to anything, but at least letting them know that it's something we're still hoping to do.
Yeah, we vetted out all the applicants, and that was the company from Florida, wasn't it?
Arizona, I think.
Arizona. I know they seem to be the best candidate of all of them. So yeah, I'd like to see you do that.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Let's see, on page 7, I think we kind of talked about most of this last time. Christine, is there anything different?
No,
Was the, maybe I had asked this before, the $12,000 that were for the
wetlands.
wetlands?
So Mike, did you want to talk about that for Juliet, the increased for the wetlands officer to do zoning work?
Oh, that's,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was something that Juliet and we all identified as a definite need, is help on the zoning side of things, which again is another reason that I think we can probably, Juliet can provide potentially some more support on the EDC side of things possibly, if there's more that needs to be done there. Zoning enforcement is one of those things that is becoming, it's just a lot. And for her to have some assistance on that, I mean, that's something that made a lot of sense and does make a lot of sense. So she's through funds they have this year, they're trying it out with Wayne,
Yeah.
who's the inland wetlands enforcement officer. So he's providing some assistance right now. So we think that's going to be a good match for us. And so we're including funds to continue that into next year, which I think will, again, free Juliet up to do some more other things that she does need to do, as well as the fact is the POCD is upcoming, and that's going to be another heavy lift for her to be working on. So.
Okay.
So I think that's everything unless there's any other line that anyone wants to revisit.
Well, I'm good with it.
I'm good.
Like,
All right, so-
are you presenting this tomorrow night again? Or that Board of Finance meeting is not for presentation, right? No, it's just,
No.
it's their meeting.
No, that's their meeting for whatever purpose they have on their agenda. That's no action for us.
It wasn't on our agenda tonight, and I know we can't add it because it's a special meeting, but weren't we going to discuss? I didn't see it. I looked at the website. I saw you had added the traffic committee and the sustainable North Stonington committee, but I didn't see where you added the committee on the education that you're going to put together with members of different committees as well as myself. That's
because I didn't advertise that publicly because we've already identified the membership of that committee. I don't need to put an ask out to the public on that. So I've put an ask out via email to the committees that are going to be members of that committee.
I didn't see it listed as one of our committees. That's what I'm saying.
And also it's a subcommittee, Bob. We just haven't appointed it yet, so I haven't put it out there.
Okay.
So I plan to put it on our next agenda for discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, and I'll have information on the code of ethics for our next meeting also. I've been working on that since our last meeting, so.
Excellent. All right, well then we will have a regular meeting next week, and we'll look forward to hearing more public feedback and discussing more in detail the rest of the budget. With that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
We into public comment?
There was no public comment at the end of this
Oh,
agenda.
it's not at the end?
No, it's a special meeting. I put it at the beginning, even though we don't usually ever have public comment. So we have a motion to adjourn.
I moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.